Hi, I'm Paul Mirabel. I'm chairman of the Research Support and Prevention Committee at Tour de Cure. This is now our sixth episode of our webinar series, Cancer Doesn't Sleep and Neither Do We. So thank you very much to the Tour de Cure community for supporting and sharing our previous episodes. We're very interested in keeping in close contact with what our researchers are doing throughout this COVID period. And we're always reminded of our first priority, which is that of supporting research, prevention, and support for those who are on the cancer journey. I'm absolutely delighted today to have Laura Franshaw join us. Dr. Franshaw is a fast-rising researcher from the Children's Cancer Institute in Sydney. She specializes in children's brain cancers and currently is focusing on DIPG, or diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, which is an aggressive and fatal cancer that impacts about 20 Australian children each year. Laura has been a recipient of a number of different grants through Tour de Cure, and we're delighted that she's able to speak to us today about the work that she's doing, and just to give her a chance to build on some previous opportunities she's had to meet the rider community within Tour de Cure and to share the impact of her work. So thank you for joining us today, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Paul, and thank you to everyone for watching and listening.
Well, look, we're particularly delighted because you managed to squeeze us in within 1 week of having your third child, which is pretty amazing. And congratulations from all of us at Tour de Cure to you for that.
Thank you. It's been a bit of a whirlwind, but it's going well. It's lovely.
And what's her name?
We called her Scarlet Rose.
Very pretty. Well, congratulations, and thank you in particular for joining us on the back of that.
Oh, thank you.
One of the questions we've been asking people in the course of the seminar is, how are they managing to work in the midst of the social isolation, with the being away from the lab for extended periods of time and so on? How have you been coping with that?
It's been interesting kind of balancing, I think, the COVID and the isolation and social distancing mixed in with being in the lab. So the Institute has been really amazing in enforcing social distancing and making sure that we all feel safe and secure, and really being able to let us as researchers prioritize our research so that everything is continuing and we're not having too much of a delay in our findings. So that's been fantastic. And it's certainly been a bit of a wake-up call, I think, going from being in the lab full-time and doing sort of 10-hour days and rushing around trying to think of ideas and what we can do next to sort of push the boundaries for DIPG, to suddenly being away from the lab and then, trying to balance writing grants and writing papers so that we continue the progress. But it's been good, and I think our determination is kind of enhanced in a way after COVID, because we've seen now the power of research and just how much it can be impacted, not only for cancer research but COVID research as well. So I think our determination to achieve our goals is burning brighter than ever, in honesty, which is wonderful. So
good to hear.
Yeah.
Look, as a cancer researcher and as a parent, and as someone that is focused on children's cancer, you obviously are acutely aware of the impact that this can have on a family. Can you share with our community a bit more about what are the changes that you've observed in children's cancer since maybe earlier, before you started even in your medical career, and where we are now?
Sure. I think I look at it as quite a privilege to be able to be in cancer research, because every day our knowledge of the cancers that we're studying advances significantly, and every day our focus can be changing to be better diagnostic applications or better treatment applications, and it's a real privilege to look at that. And I think when you're looking at cancers as aggressive as DIPG, we have to look at our history, and we have to look back and think that we have all of these cancer types which only 20 or 30 years ago were incurable. And I think that's still, within my lifetime. And there were children and adults getting diagnosed, and unfortunately we're given those horrifying statistics and told to make memories, and now those cancers are completely curable. So we look at those and we hold hope, thinking that if we look at the past and we learn from the past, it shows us that we can do it. And so we know that we're able to get there. It's just putting in the hard yards and kind of thinking outside the box and pushing the boundaries and taking it that way. So, you know, we definitely use cancer types like Burkitt's lymphoma and all of our leukemias as our driving force to say, well, not so long ago, these were fatal, just like DIPG, and now they're curable, and children and adults are living with disease-free, and that's a fantastic outcome, and we can achieve that for cancers like DIPG. It's just putting in the hard yards and getting there and continuing to push the boundaries and put in, I think, the crazy applications to Tour de Cure about what we hope will cure it one day.
So do we. So do we. One of the people who's co-starred with you in some previous videos has been a pocket rocket of a young girl named Lulu.
Yes.
Who is the beautiful daughter of one of your colleagues. Tell us a little bit about Lulu and how she is progressing in her own journey.
So yeah, Lulu was this amazing, vivacious little girl who I had the privilege of meeting actually through working at the Institute. And as you mentioned, Lulu's mum, Josie, works there with us as well. And Lulu, when she was only 9 months old, was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma. And so it was it still is a very horrifying disease. And I think that Josie and Lulu and all of her family and friends were put through those horrifying statistics and told that they may not survive this. And Lulu is just this amazing little warrior who just tackled it head on, basically. And she's come through, and she's now 10, and she's just a shining star of what research and the power of research can do. And so she's not quite disease-free. You're never really clear from a neuroblastoma diagnosis. There's always that risk of it coming back. And they obviously live with those daily concerns, but they're the sorts of things I think that drive Lulu to be involved with charities like the Institute and with Tour de Cure, and her mum in particular, who was so amazed with the advances in research that she left and came to work at the Institute, first volunteering and then full-time now to try to be on this journey with us of curing childhood cancer. So she's doing exceptionally well.
That's great to hear. She's someone who, quite frankly, she's a spark in her own little right.
She is. She has, I think, a very special place in my heart, and a lot of the times I think you'll see that it gets everybody quite emotional, because she's just such a pure, innocent thing, like every child I think that's diagnosed with cancer. And just the fact that she's pulled through, and she has such a powerful spirit of beating it and encouraging other children to beat it, and this beautiful selflessness is amazing.
It's very, very well described.
Thank you.
Let me ask you about your area of specialty. First of all, DIPG. For those who know a little bit about cancer, they know that's a 4-letter acronym, which is actually a very challenging one to have to come to terms with in terms of the seriousness. What's the disease all about, and how does it manifest itself?
So DIPG is a disease which forms in the brainstem, which is basically the center of the brain. And the brainstem is really a pivotal part of development in children and in adults. So it controls the ability to breathe and eat and swallow and chew and just all of those motor functions. And so because of that, DIPG tumours cannot be surgically removed safely, because there's too much of a risk of fatality through the surgery. So we often, for cancers like this, tend to lean on things like chemotherapy and radiation. But unfortunately for DIPG, it's one of the most aggressive diseases that we've seen. So chemotherapy is almost ineffective against DIPG tumours, and that leaves children with only radiation. And unfortunately, radiation only extends prognosis for each child on average 2 to 3 months. So it means that children and families who are diagnosed with DIPG have on average survival possibilities of less than 10% living beyond 1 year. So it's a really devastating disease for families and for children to go through. And I find it incredibly almost humbling and a great privilege to be able to work on this disease, because I think we all know the gravity of what a DIPG diagnosis is. And I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of parents and a lot of children, and just to see the hope that they hold out for research is incredibly humbling. So it's one which is sort of wonderful to work on in a way, because every day we're unlocking the mechanisms that this disease is using and why it's so aggressive, growing within the brainstem, and basically how we can beat it. So identifying all those different drivers that control the growth, and basically our aim is to stop all of those drivers and force the tumour cells to self-destruct. So we're getting there each and every day.
There's been a number of projects that you're involved with in this area which have been supported by Tour de Cure. Can you share with the communities some of the work that you have underway in this very, very important area?
Yes, so we've got quite a few projects. We've been really fortunate to have Tour de Cure's support now for many years, for not only directly myself, but also the brain tumour research team within the Children's Cancer Institute. The particular research that I focus on is having a look at those mechanisms which control the growth of DIPG cells and how they differ from normal cells. Because when we work that out, we can identify then drugs that can target those particular mechanisms and pathways and essentially put a stop to them. And we've had some really exciting progress. One of my personal favourites, which is Tour de Cure funded, is we've actually identified this natural plant product which has really strong anti-cancer activity against DIPG. And some of the most exciting things are that it's already FDA approved. It's approved for use in children, so it'll be really rapid to enter the clinic, which gives us a lot of hope in the field. And we've found out that we can use some of the lowest drug concentrations pretty much tested in order to make these DIPG cells self-destruct. And so our research, which is Tour de Cure funded, is actually focusing on building upon this therapy. So can we combine it with radiation, which, as I mentioned, is the only current treatment? Can we combine it with other drugs which are going to enhance its activity and make it an even stronger, more potent combination, so that eventually we can use these combinations to work towards a cure?
Fantastic. Some of this work has been funded through one of Tour de Cure's favorite sons, who is a live wire in his own right, Callum Mead, who is based in Singapore. And for those in the community who aren't aware of it, Callum did this rather remarkable swim across the English Channel last year to raise funds to support that particular project, if I'm not mistaken.
He did, yes.
Any words for Callum at this point, if he's listening in?
I think meeting Callum and the Channeling a Cause team and his beautiful family and support network that they've built over there for Tour de Cure and for this project and the Institute has been honestly quite life-changing for me, because when I put in an application to Tour de Cure, I wasn't actually aware of everything that was going on behind, and all of the cogs, I guess, were turning. And I didn't realise that through Tour de Cure and through Channeling a Cause that the project had been selected for funding through that. And so when we did that, I got notified that there was this guy overseas who wanted to, swim across the English Channel, which still to me I find absolutely mind-boggling. So I'm not the strongest swimmer myself. I would probably make it about 5 meters and then just give up. And the fact that he successfully did it was amazing. And now I've gotten word from him that he's actually looking at extending that through Tour de Cure. And in order for him to be able to fund more Tour de Cure projects, is actually looking at doing a triple crossing. So going there and back and there again, which is just phenomenal. So as I mentioned, I'm not the strongest swimmer, so I have nothing but awe for him and all his family has sacrificed and are doing to change this disease and to change other projects as well in the future. So it's fantastic.
Now, he and his wife, Sarah, are beautiful people. They've got a fantastic team to support them in this effort. And look, I have to concur. I'm absolutely blown away by not only his commitment, but his ambition to actually make a difference through these types of efforts. And we're delighted that we can do so and that we can support research such as yours. It is so important.
It is, and yeah, it's been an amazing experience meeting them and going. I was fortunate enough to go over to Singapore and meet them all in person and meet the huge support network that that is actively fundraising for Tour de Cure and, you know, just hoping to be a part of making a difference, not only for DIPG, but every cancer type, and helping to achieve all the goals that, you know, TDC have set. So it's been a fantastic journey.
Terrific. Stepping outside of that specific project, Laura, one of the things I think people would find interesting would be to understand from the perspective of a young researcher, someone relatively new into the whole research field, what's your career path look like? How do you continue to grow? What's the role of more senior researchers within CCIA, et cetera, in terms of your own development as a cancer scientist?
I think being a scientist, it's kind of that delicate balance of conducting research and always pushing outside the boundaries and developing project ideas, not only for existing projects, but future projects. And one thing that we always try to do within the brain tumour team is to think not a year ahead, but to think 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. What is it we need to do to not find just one drug that works, but find 10 drugs that work? So for me personally, my career, I had a joke with Michelle Haber, who's the director of the Institute, on one of the first days that I met her, and I didn't actually realise that it was the director that I was speaking to, and told her that one day I would be the director of the Institute, and then I was very unfortunately left that, and they said, "You just realised you told the director that you were going to have her job."
Did you give her a time frame for that?
No, thankfully not. But, you know, I would love to see myself in a position like that one day, where it's just being sort of a driving force and a pillar of strength for an institute, and just always continually pushing the boundaries and asking questions and developing more junior scientists to think that way, and really just to be able to sit back and look at the difference institutes like the Children's Cancer Institute and bodies like Tour de Cure are able to make, and know that, you know, ideally at the end of my career, that I was a part of something which is so much bigger than I ever thought I could be a part of, and really hopefully sit back and go, I was a part of curing DIPG, whether it be my project or just being a part of someone else's project that moves, you know, to cure it. So I think that would be an ideal sort of direction for my career. And I have to apologise to Michelle if she's listening.
I don't think there'd be any need to. I suspect, knowing Michelle, she'd be delighted to think that there are people that want to aspire to that role.
Absolutely, yeah. She's a very amazing woman.
Tell me this, and it's to a certain extent an unfair question that I'm asking a woman, because I'm not sure I'd ask the same question of a man. But let me ask it in any event. How do you manage the work-life mother balance? You've got 3 children, you know, you've got a family, you've got a career. How do you manage all of that?
It was a bit difficult at first, in honesty, and I think it was just a personal difficulty trying to work out how to continue my career on the trajectory that I wanted it to go down, and then how to balance time with my children and not feel like one was happening at the sacrifice of another. And so I'm very lucky. I've got our 3 children are just amazing. I'll say that, even though one of them's only 8 days old, but I have a feeling. And I've got a very supportive husband who I've been with way from before I started studying at university, and we've always just had this drive of do what you love and do what makes you get up out of bed every day. And I'm very fortunate not only to get out of bed and be able to say that I'm a part of trying to cure a childhood cancer, but also saying that, you know, I'm a wife and a mother, and wearing all these different hats of sometimes, you know, a good chef and a bad chef, and, you know, changing nappies and balancing everything that every person does. And as you mentioned, it's not just women, it's also men. You know, we've got this, I think everyone has this sort of innate and strong ability to balance everything that they have to. And I know that there's many people who are going through many different struggles, and we're very fortunate to have the hats on that we're wearing at the moment. So I kind of look at it and think, no matter what, you know, I'm trying to juggle in the air, you've got to keep going and, you know, and get there in the end. So We're very lucky, and thankfully it's that balancing act is it's getting there at the moment, which is lovely.
Good, good. We're very pleased to hear that.
Thank you.
Tell me this: with when you look at the challenges and just the hard work and the focus that's required to deliver on developing research insights, I think a lot of people that aren't involved in research would probably be surprised to find out how much effort has to go into raising funds to do that work.
Yeah.
Can you share your perspective on that? Is it something that surprised you? Is it and how do you think about it as a researcher?
I think in terms of raising funds, there's definitely two aspects to it. There's this side where, you know, we're applying for grants and we're attempting to get funding. And then there's the amazing sides like Tour de Cure that are the people who are like the driving force in securing that. And I wasn't quite aware of how difficult it actually was, in honesty, to not only think of the ideas and push the boundaries in terms of grants, but actually to acquire the funding. In the most positive of way, it's a very competitive industry to work in, and there's a million ideas that out there worldwide that are all equally as deserving, and unfortunately funding rates, you know, can be quite difficult, especially when you have times like COVID which restrict it. But then you have, you know, places like Tour de Cure, which are kind of like the guardian angels of research, where you have this idea that you think maybe that could be it. Maybe that'll be the idea that takes us over and gets us an effective drug or a new treatment or a new diagnostic application. And you write your application and then suddenly you get an email saying it's successful, and it just opens all of these doors. And you know, I've had the enormous privilege of going to, you know, a couple of different events and meeting with all the people from Tour de Cure and being able to chat with them about, you know, why they're pushing themselves mentally and physically, and, you know, who is it that is their driving force for what they're doing, whether it be cycling or swimming the English Channel. And it's quite amazing, I think, and honestly quite life-changing to have those sorts of discussions where you find out what is their driving force for funding cancer research, whether it be like our project or any project really for any institute, and you know, who is their person that is their driving force for what they're doing. So you know, there's so many different sides to funding and grants and applications that we think of as researchers that kind of end up being our driving force behind it, because we know that, you know, when we're fortunate enough to receive a grant, it's not just receiving a check, it's the people who have, you know, cycled across state lines in order to be able to do that, and who have done, you know, years of fundraising in order to support projects, and, you know, children who have shaved their heads or cut their hair or, you know, donated their pocket money to Tour de Cure. And so we know that it's so much more than just receiving a check and it, you know, it ending when the project ends. It's, you know, that belief that people have in us that, you know, they can be a part of hopefully us making a difference, and that there's such an integral, you know, component in that, because really research wouldn't happen without funding. And so it's something which is very humbling and pushes us forward, which is great.
I remember having a conversation with you one afternoon, probably about 18 months ago, when I think we probably unfairly surprised you with some good news around the conflict. And
I remember.
and we caught you on the fly, and we caught you on video.
You did.
You made a very interesting observation that afternoon, which I don't know if you recall it, but you said that it was very helpful to you when you've had a bad day in the lab.
Definitely.
And I don't think we think about researchers as having bad days. We think of, you know, days being, you know, largely the same as the previous day, and so on and so forth. Do you remember your comment?
I do remember the comment. Yeah, I was talking, and yeah, I was quite shocked actually when we received the notice that we did get the grant. And I remember speaking with you, and we were just talking about how, you know, when we receive it, it becomes really our driving force, you know, behind pushing the research forward. And, you know, as I mentioned, it's We do have bad days, unfortunately. You know, it's one of those jobs where we'll follow a child's journey and you sit there and you hope that they'll be outside of the statistics and they're going really well. And, you know, like our hearts go out to every child and worldwide that's fighting this disease, and every family who's hearing those statistics and, you know, praying every night that there's a hope. And so on days where we go in and we have an experiment that might not work, or we have a project where we think, okay, which direction can we take it, and which drugs do we prioritize, and how we get funding for this crazy idea, they're the sorts of things I think that we need the inspiration to kind of push us through. And that's exactly what moments like the Tour de Cure moment where we got told we were successful with the grant does, because, you know, you sit there and you go, there's so much belief. It's really like an internal belief with everybody that, you know, we can be a part of curing cancer, and not only childhood but adult cancer, and make this world such a better place. Because I think it just runs in everybody's blood. And so they're the things that kind of push us and let us know that it's okay to have a bad day. Pick yourself up, keep going, because somewhere, well, pretty much everywhere, there's people that believe in you and that push their bodies and cycle kilometers and kilometers and kilometers. And that's the sort of thing that really helps to get us through every day, that kind of we hit a bit of a blip in in the road. So it's
I wanted to share that with our community, because to us it's very empowering. You know, we have a view that if we can help our volunteers and our corporate sponsors who are so valuable to us,
yes,
and help them hear what happens on the other side of the research wall, if you will, and how important we are, not just in terms of the funding, but as you say, the moral support for what you're doing. What you do in turn reinforces everything that we're doing, and becomes a very virtuous cycle. And one which, you know, if we use it to its full potential, it should contribute to ongoing development and ongoing insights and hopefully cures.
Definitely.
Which is really what we're all spending a lot of time hoping to support. So that's terrific.
And I must admit, like, I'm constantly on things like the Tour de Cure Facebook page and always looking at the comments of people encouraging not only the cyclists and the fundraising and everything like that, but also the researchers, and, you know, saying, come on, you can do it, and everything. And they're the sorts of comments I think that, you know, not only would push the cyclists and the funding efforts, but also the researchers to have that belief to go, okay, well, everybody out there is behind you. You know, pick yourself up, let's keep going, and let's do this, and let's see it within our lifetime, where we have, you know, cancers that are cured in our lifetime that we never thought we'd be able to. So
we're on the same page there, Laura.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Let me just finish with this. What do the next few months look like for you now?
I think it's going to be that balance. So I was speaking to my bosses and just saying I was trying to think of as many different experiments and project ideas and everything like that before I officially went on any form of maternity leave. So I typed up about 30 pages of experiments, which I'm sure that my staff are absolutely not enjoying, because I said, please don't have a heart attack in the subject when I sent the email. So we're still in daily correspondence and getting updates on how experiments are going and changing directions of projects to involve different drugs and things like that. So I think the daily balance is, and the next few months are going to be really exciting, not only in seeing where the different projects are actually going, but also finding again that balance of family life and working, and, you know, continuing the research so that nothing stops. And so I think there's definitely going to be some exciting times, and there's been some huge advances already in the projects. So I think it looks like a pretty good couple of months.
Terrific. Well, look, with that, let me just say thank you. Congratulations to you and your husband. All the very best with Scarlet Rose. Please extend to Lulu all the best wishes from everyone at the Tour de Cure family, of which you're part of. And we wish you the very, very best and good fortune in all the work that you're doing. Thank you for
Thank you
joining
so
us.
much. Thank you. And thank you to everyone at Tour de Cure and all of the the people that are at their fundraising and the cyclists, because without you guys and without people like Callum to push the English Channel and, you know, face those sorts of extreme hurdles, we wouldn't be anywhere doing our research. So we have to say on behalf of all the researchers, we are eternally grateful to have your support and to have Tour de Cure there behind us and pushing us along and hopefully helping us to achieve the goals that I know are perfectly aligned.
We'll make sure the message gets out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.